Pedophiles are those who sexually abuse or harass children. Let's not meet. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and let's hear 3 stories of those who've encountered them. My driver's ed instructor, the pedophile. I've been lurking on the subreddit for a year or 2 now, so I finally decided to share one of my creepy experiences with you all. This happened 5 years ago, when I was 15. Like most almost 16-year-olds, I was eager to learn how to drive and get my driver's license, so my parents signed me up for a driver's ed course near our house. When the first day of the course rolled around, I was super excited to go, and had my mom drop me off early, so I could pick out a good seat and maybe make a friend or 2. Wanting to be cool, I had my mom drop me off without even coming inside. The place was super shady looking from the outside, and even sketchier inside. It was in a strip mall, in which most other businesses has closed down. The floor was peeling, and there was a large empty aquarium. Not just no fish, no anything, besides some old algae, taking up most of the space. No one was working the front desk, and I was too nervous to go look around, so I just sat in the waiting area. That's when I met him. He was disgustingly fat, with long, yellowy, greasy hair that hung down his back in a stringy mess. His nails, both on his hands and feet, which were bare, were way too long, and he was wearing one of those faux silk bun-down shirts with a tacky dragon on the front, but his stomach was too big, leaving the spaces between the buns gaping open to expose his nasty belly. Basically, he had the look and smell of a long-time basement dweller. He approached me with a disturbing, gleeful smile and gave me a hug without asking my permission, and said that's what he did for all new students. However, when the rest of my class trickled in, which were all males, none of them received a hug. When the lesson began, he talked on and on about the proper attire to wear when driving, telling us an anecdote about a fellow driver's ed instructor who was driving with a female student when they almost got into an accident. Apparently, the slamming of the brakes caused the girl's breast to come out of her shirt. While telling the story, he was leering at me intensely, and when he finished, he asked, "Now, who would have wanted to be there to see that?" and raised his own hand. I felt so uncomfortable, and it seemed like the rest of the class did so too. But that wasn't the end of it. He then came over to me, put his finger a centimeter away from my cleavage, and said in a disturbing voice, "Now this seems like exactly the kind of shirt that could get us into that situation." I was totally freaked out, but I didn't know what to do. After class, a couple of other students came up to me and told me I should never get into the instructor's car alone with him and to tell my parents, etc. But I was too embarrassed to bring it up to my mom or dad. Stupid, I know. So I continued to put up with it for weeks. The comments and physical touching just got more and more aggressively sexual, and he clearly anticipated me showing up before anyone else got there, so he could just creep up on me without my classmates there to help me. For example, he wore a stained Hooters t-shirt to class one day and whispered in my ear, "I love to see your Hooters." Another day, when I was drinking from the water fountain, he left class and snuck up behind me, breathing down my neck, and ran his little sausage fingers down my back to supposedly tuck in my tag. I just wanted to get out of there, and it seemed too mortifying to tell my parents, so I put up with it, and it continued. When we finally reached the end of the course, we had a little party for which he encouraged all of us to wear fun clothes. For some reason, I thought that would be a great day to wear a miniskirt. He bought us hamburgers, and we watched auto accident footage, despite our protests. This guy was clearly fucked up in a weird sort of way. The most disturbing part of all of this was that he brought a digital camera with him to document his best class ever. He took one group shot of the class and then continued to take candid shots of me. He also kept holding the camera awkwardly under the table, and it would flash, and he would giggle in this super high-pitched and creepy way and say, "Oops, that was an accident." Really, I should have known better, but I was clueless. I didn't think much more of him after that until a week or so later. A female high school classmate of mine, who was in another section of his driver's eds class, had just had her wrap-up class the night before. Being an amateur photographer, she volunteered to take the photos for him, and he agreed. She was looking back at her pictures in his camera roll when she accidentally went too far back and found photos of my class's party. She said there were dozens of photos of me, pictures of my face, but also lots of photos of my legs, and the worst, zoomed in photos of my crotch and underwear area that he had been taking under the table. She freaked out and tried to delete some of them, but he got super aggressive and lunged across the room at her and snatched the camera away. I wish I could tell you I told my parents, but instead I just cried and felt terrible and got mad, but ultimately never did anything. Who knows how many girls he did this to before me and after me. As an adult, I tried Googling him to see if he ended up on some sex offender registry or in prison, but no such luck. So creepy, driver's ed instructor. Let's definitely not meet again. Apartment maintenance man, rapist. This happened when I was very young, 3 or 4 probably, so I have very little recollection of this man. This is largely from what my mother has told me over the years. I'm 23. A little backstory. I have 2 sisters who are both very close in age with me, 22, 24. We have been rather well known for our close ages and relationship with one another, as well as admittedly being pretty cute. We also have an older brother who was about 17 at the time, and another sister who had just moved out of college. My parents were recently separated, and my dad was living in Portland for his new job, so my mom, sisters, teenage brother, and I were all crammed into a 3-bedroom apartment in a safe part of a rather safe city at the time. One day, there was something wrong with our toilet, so my mom had to call the complex maintenance man to come over to fix it. In order to save on plumbing costs, I imagine. I remember little of that apartment, although I do have a pretty clear image of what this guy looked like. He seemed tall, even though I was small. My dad is 6'4", and my brother is just slightly shorter, so I had a pretty good idea. He was quite slender and had a thick sandy-colored mustache. Very cliche, I know. When he came over, my mom immediately had a gut feeling about him. Her gut intuition is something that not only has saved her various times, but also saved her girls that day, and is something I'm proud to have inherited. From my point of view, this guy was great. He was really friendly to my sisters and I, and allowed us to watch him work on the toilet, which, to being 2 to 4-year-olds, is actually pretty exciting. While letting us to play with his various tools and whatnot, I remember my favorite one was one resembling something of a fishing pole. As he was all too friendly to 3 little girls, he refused to make any sort of eye contact with either my mom or my brother. huge red flags in my mom's eyes. At some point in the time he was over, I remember him asking us if we wanted to go to Taco Bell with him. It was on the same block as the apartment complex. Elated at the idea, I was all for it. He encouraged us to ask our mom permission, which now seems like a ridiculous idea, as if she would ever let us go off with someone like that. I guess he felt as if she was an easy target, considering she was a single mom of a teenage boy and 3 girls, not even of school age yet. I suppose if she were a lesser woman, she would have taken the offer as a break from taking care of us, but thankfully, that's not the kind of mother she is. I remember asking if we could go, and being caught off guard by her immediate and stern refusal of the idea. I even remember being disappointed that we couldn't, since playing with his gadgets had been so much fun, and he seemed so nice. And I'll be honest, I was raised a fast food kid, and Taco Bell is the shit. We went back to the bathroom, and to his creepy disappointment, we couldn't go with him. And thank God if you're out there, because it wasn't long before his true intentions came to light. Prior to our parents' separation, we owned a rather popular American-style restaurant where my parents became friends with many of the regulars. One happened to be a local detective and was going door to door at the complex looking for any relevant information to a case he had been working on. My dad has since moved back to Eugene, and my parents were back together. When the detective came to our door, my dad had answered, happy to see his old friend, none the wiser to anything we had encountered, the maintenance man. My mom had returned home just after the detective left, and upon hearing about his visit, she immediately chased after him and told him all about her bad vibes, his weird encounter with us, as well as other times he had creeped her out. Because of everything she had said to him, she became a witness in a lawsuit filed by a girl against our apartment complex, the details of which are chilling. It turns out that he entered her apartment and held her captive in her own home for over 24 hours, repeatedly raping her. The very same night this even took place, my brother came home late and told my mom that the maintenance man was out in the parking lot, pacing around and talking to himself, acting extremely erratic and crazy. Turns out, he must have actually been talking to himself in what he was doing. Apparently, he only let her live because she pled with him that she wouldn't tell anyone. She ended up filing a suit against the apartment complex for hiring him and giving him access to her apartment, which is even more creepy for me to know that he had the keys to ours as well. My mom went to court on the scheduled date, only to find out that they had reached a settlement. The woman he raped approached my mom and gave her a big hug, and told her that she was a strong woman, an amazing mother for seeing the evil in him right away, and not trusting him with us, because apparently, other women in the complex had not been so smart. So to the creepy mustache pedo rapist, I hope you got what you deserved many times over in prison, or wherever you are as someone's bottom, dead, or out in society. Let's not meet again. Pedophile and pedo family trying to rekindle old family friendship. When I was 8 years old, I went to a slumber party at my friend Georgia's house. Her older brother, who was 16, also had a friend named Kyle over. Kyle molested me. He and the brother forcibly separated us. He molested me in one room, while the brother assaulted his sister in the other. When I told her mother, she scolded me and warned me not to tell anyone, or my mother would be angry with me. I believed her for some reason. Georgia's parents totally ignored Kyle's behavior. He was so blatant about it that he tried to make me sit in his lap at lunch and tried to put his hand in my swimsuit bottom in the car, with them in the front seat. I probably begged her at least 3 or 4 times to make him leave me alone, and she said, "He's just playing." Not long after, I broke out in a horrible, painful rash all the way up to my belly button. I had to tell my mom. The police got involved, and the whole story emerged. The older brother had been molesting my friend for years. Kyle got counseling because he was a juvenile, but now he's a registered sex offender, having been convicted of assaulting other young girls since. Fast forward to me at 17, we left the church where Georgia's family attended not long after all that happened, and we were going to another church across town. One day, someone taps me on the shoulder. I turn around. It's Georgia's mother. "Oh, hi!" she exclaims, and tries to wrap me in a big bear hug. "We decided to move to this church too. It's so great to see you here." Absolutely no recognition whatsoever of the past in her eyes. I had nothing to say to her, so I immediately excused myself. The next Sunday, the whole family, big pedo brother included, comes up and starts talking to me like we're old friends. How's the family? And you gotta come over and try this pasta Georgia makes. Huge fake grins and constant attempts at giving me hugs. This makes me so uncomfortable, I can't even describe it. I make every attempt possible to make it obvious I don't want to talk to them, but they keep persisting. They wanted out phone numbers, to go to the movies and barbecues. They tried to invite themselves to my sister's birthday party. For God's sakes, why? I've never been able to figure out why. It kept it up for months. It was the final straw in me giving up on organized religion. I stopped going just to avoid them.